Good morning and welcome to Zen Fits here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the world. But what is the center? The center is androgynous. The center, if you look at the world in terms of male and female, active, passive, all these pairs of opposites, these pairs of contradictory principles, like active and passive, male and female, in and out, up and down, good, bad, hard, soft, all these opposites we think can be separated, but they're really one at heart, and yet they appear as separate. So the title of this talk is We're All Trans at Heart. We're all trans at heart. And this goes back to Plato. I mean, Plato's, all religions or cultures have a story of their origin. How did it all begin? How did humanity begin? Who's the creator? What's the story? And every culture has its own story. Of course, ours is the Genesis in the Bible, but most of that came from Persia. So, from Babylonian, from Zoroastrianism. But India has a great creation story, but anyway, so this Plato, of course, had one for the Greeks, and the origin story of Plato is that man, the original human, was androgynous, or was male and female, had 4 arms, 4 legs. It was a whole being, both men. It was very, very powerful. And the gods, who were a little jealous of this human because it was so powerful, so they persuaded Zeus to split man apart into male and female, and then they would spend their whole lives trying to reunite and restore the one, you see, instead of competing with the gods. And so Zeus split them apart. And so humanity spends its whole life trying to restore unity, or the androgyny, the original trans, you see. So if you look at it this way, metaphorically, with a wide-angle lens, as I like to do, because, I've been around for decades now, and I can look back over the decades of history from World War II up until now, and I can see them all as chapters. And then I study mythology under Joseph Campbell, so I get a sense of mythology. And then I study yoga and Zen or Buddhism, and I get a sense of the psychological. So for me, it's just one great big panorama of the same thing, restoring unity. Division and restore unity, split and come back. It's like breathing in and breathing out. So history is breathing in and breathing out. It's breaking up and coming back together. That all of our movies are about that. Restoring unity, love affairs, romance, restoring unity. Oh, they got together, and lived happily ever, the tension and the resolution, the pain and the pleasure, the struggle and the dis-ease and the at ease. And this takes all kinds of forms. So we don't see the one that is many, you see. So in Hindu mythology, the core myth, particularly in yoga, is Shiva. Now Shiva is androgynous. He's the first rock star. If you look at his statue, the dancing Shiva, all of them, there's half his face is female and half is male. So the male is the transcendent and the female is the concrete. So the male and the female are like the creativity and the power. So Shiva and Shakti, Shiva is the transcendent principle, and Shakti is the eminent principle, the creation, you see. And they they're different, but they can't be separated. In Christianity, in the Bible, they are separated. God is the transcendent principle, and nature is fallen and needs to be fixed. God is perfect and nature is imperfect, and man's job is to fix it. So nature is female, and so it's man's job to fix her or control her, you see, or put her in a box and just stay in the kitchen and make babies. Anyway, but our original nature is trans. And this really popped out of the box in the 60s. My Lord, it popped out of the box. You see, in the 50s, everything was socially fixed in roles. Women were women, men were men. Just watch Mad Men. It was a man's world. And the house was, women could have two functions, secretary or housewife, mother or mistress. So in the 50s, women had two roles, that of the Madonna or the seductress. You know, these were two. And so the male psyche could go back and forth between the two. But then this all broke apart because it was a false arrangement. It didn't. There was a separation. Male and female were wide apart, you see. They're coming back together. In the 60s, and you could watch Mad Men, when women entered the workforce, and they broke free from the corset. When I met my wife in 1959, she had to wear a corset. She had to wear a corset. It took a hell of a job trying to get through that thing, believe me. But then there was a liberation, you know. The female was liberated. And then in the 70s, we had the rock star, Rocky Horror movie show. Remember that? All the rock stars were androgynous. And when in the music, in the rock star, you see, which is basically what was Shiva. The rock star is the dance of Shiva. The male and female come together as one, and it creates tremendous music. When the male and female come together, that's creation in the form of art, in culture. So you look back over history, when these two principles are united, you have a golden age, and then they separate. And the darkness comes back. Everything is frozen. And then we can't stand the ice, and the history comes back and starts melting. And the male and female waters mix, and you have creation again. And then there's a reaction, and the waters freeze into the forms, you see. So I think we're going through that again. But now, it's instead of being androgyny in fashion, like in the 70s, it was a weird decade. You couldn't tell, did men look like men and women looked like men, and the fashions were all mixed up. And this drove the conservatives, the Republicans or the conservatives mad, because the right wing of any party is basically the male principle, which wants to keep the female principle a little lower, you see. And the left, you see, emphasizes the female principle and wants to keep the right a little lower. You know, so you got these two, you got this teeter-totter going on, you know, and once in a while they meet in the middle as balance, but then they go back like this again. So they're constantly, in the 70s they met and had tremendous music, and now the music's gone. We just listened to the rock music of the 60s and 70s. You know, the creativity is gone now. It's kind of like settled into its forms. Society tends to freeze up, you see. It tends to freeze up. Once it melts and they have the androgyny and the mixing of everything, then it freezes up and everything settles into its rigidity of forms and fashions and beliefs and politics and so forth, you see. And then we can't stand it anymore, and it starts to melt, and there's a new age and a new melting and a new creative period, and then there's a freezing, you see. So are we in a melting right now? But the form of melting now is not in fashion, androgynous fashions. It seems to be biological. You know, so the urge to be trans, or the urge to be bi, or the urge to be the other side, or the urge to mix it up, you see, now is not so much in fashion, but in the body. So it's just shifting from mind to form. Now, in Buddhism, in Zen, body and mind are form and emptiness, or form is body and mind is a mental form, and there is a source that is empty out of which these two forms come. So the emptiness is, I would say, androgynous, or where the two forms are one and can't be separated. But then when we come into form, either body or mind, they separate. So we have duality. Now we have the play of consciousness, which is the play of the two sides. You can't have play unless you have two sides. So there's no play in the one. Everything is one. There's no dissonance. It's like elevator music. There's no dissonance. What kind of a love affair? Well, you never have any love affairs if there's no tension, no dissonance. Well, we love the dissonance. We love the tension. We love the struggle to get resolution. And then you go, ah. See, so this is what I've been talking about all the time, is that this struggle becomes when the struggle becomes a double bind, where neither side is winning. It creates a saturation of this tension, which will either erupt in violence or in creativity. In the 60s, it erupted in both violence and creativity. So it was a very violent decade and a very creative decade. We look back on it with kind of wonder, you know, and that violence of the 60s and the 70s kind of like took some weird forms, you know. First of all, there was, well, I'll get off into that. So let's get back to the point that we're all trans at heart, that we're all Shiva at heart, we're all one at heart, but to manifest in form and mind, we arise as two, and then we identify with one or the other. I'm a man, and you're a woman, and they're never the twain, you know, and I got my power, and you got yours, and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, but that's the rigidity of forms, of roles, you know, biological roles, social war, you know, mental wars, contrast, you know, the man that can't give up his macho identity, and he can't cry, and all of that stuff, you know. So there's always this ice versus water. There's always the freezing of the mind and the body in forms. So everybody knows what they are and who they are, and everything is fixed. And so this is the conservative or the Republican conservative, because you can serve the forms, you can serve the ice and the rigidity and the roles, so you know what's going on and you don't feel threatened, you see. Because when things start to mix up, we feel very threatened. It's like a whiteout. It's like being lost in the forest. We don't have a road map. We don't have nothing where the compasses don't work, you know. We're lost. So we want to get that certainty back, the certainty of roles and forms. And so this is constantly mixing up. So I think it seems to be we're going through a biological 70s. In 70s, it was the fashions that were all mixed up, and now it's the biology, and it's driving the conservatives mad. So let's get back to Plato and find that Shiva, Shakti, that androgyny inside, where you are the one in your own personal life, you're one, but we manifest it in different ways. We get married, and what is marriage but a manifestation of the two, you see, in a play, in a drama. So all marriages are dramas of these two principles in a relationship. And there's a struggle. I want to go to the beach. No, I'm going to the mountains. In any particular situation, one must be the chooser. So if the relationship is fixed, the man is the chooser. If it's fixed in the other way, the woman is the chooser, and the man is repressed, either way like that. Or you have a relationship where you share choosing depending on the situation. Anyway, we're all trans at heart. So I just wanted to, I was thinking about Shiva this morning, and the dance of Shiva is the dance of, metaphorically, the rock star. The metaphorical rock star, Zorba the Greek, is the dance of creation, is the liberation when the two come together. Jung talked about this. Everything is the split in the psyche, the split in the mind, the split in society, and the urge to reunite. And so Trump got elected on that. Restore America. Thanks for dropping in. Okay, come off.